Welcome to Subramani. I have done a few episodes on risk, so this would be one more. And I'm going to talk about risky investor behavior. What risks do investors take? And it is unbelievable the kind of things that I'm going to talk to you about. First risk, investing in assets that they do not understand. There are people who can never understand many of the asset classes which are available, but they would still go and fall for it. They would go and put money in REIT without understanding how a REIT works. I have nothing against your investing in REIT as long as you understand how it works. In a country where the yields on something like real estate given out on rent is 2-3%, maybe 5%. Yes, we talk about how good quality commercial estate can be given at 7, 8, 9%. Believe me, you can't get 12-13% kind of return in REITs simply because of the fact that you want that return, right? Those returns are not available. So if you don't understand REITs, don't invest. If you don't understand the mutual fund, how to pick up a fund scheme, invest in an index fund, right? You don't understand, go to an IFA. There are various methods of reducing the risk, right? So first risk, not investing in assets which you don't understand. And the second risk, which you will not even believe, and I have spent my lifetime talking about it, is forgetting compounding. Compounding works. If you picked up a good share, if you picked up a good portfolio, over periods of time, if it is well managed, it will create wealth. And there is no shortcut to reducing N. N can't be manipulated, right? So you cannot tell the compounding formula, what you do for somebody else in 30 years, do it for me in 15 years. It doesn't work. So you have got to give it time. It takes 9 months to produce a baby. Whatever you do doesn't change, right? So compounding happens well only over extremely long periods of time. So maybe if your grandfather had invested in 1887 or something like that, yes, obviously you would have got a fabulous return by now. But well, he didn't, then your great grandfather didn't, your grandfather didn't, your father didn't. So it's time for you to wake up and understand that at least you have to do. You can create a family heirloom, and that can become 1000 crores in at least in your son's or your daughter's lifetime, if not in your lifetime. That's not bad, correct? And keep working at it. The third most important thing is investing in shit. I am making this statement very carefully. There is something called a Bombay Stock Exchange, which has created an A group and a B group and a B1 group. You don't need to go below this. You cannot afford to take risk at any stage of your life unless you're running thousands of crores worth of portfolio. You don't need to take risk. Stick to A and B1. That's good enough for you. In fact, I would say go to the extent of saying for large cap, just pick from the Sensex. That's good enough for you. You are not in a position to be able to pick up something which is today Z category share, which will then become A group. We don't have those skills. Don't try that. There is a Vallabh Bhansali to do this. There are merchant bankers and investment bankers who will do this. It's not meant for us. So please understand, investing in shit, hoping that this 6 rupee share will become 12 rupees. We all do it. We all love doing it. We all think that we are searching for the next Asian Paints, next HDFC Banks, next Cholamandalam or next Coromandel. Don't need to do it. Just stick to these names which you have heard and you won't go too badly. Yes, this is buy it when it is down. There is a succession problem in HDFC Bank, therefore there is a price fall. Some reason like that. It's a buy on dip portfolio. All these are worth buying on dips, especially when suppose there is a drought and nothing is happening. Fertilizer subsidy has not been paid for a year or two. Obviously Coromandel will be doing badly. E.I.D. Parry will be doing badly because sugar is done badly. You will get all these shares at a lower price. Don't buy shit, because shit at any price is going to give you a lot of pain. It may give you some pleasure initially, but you don't have to smell shit, you don't have to taste it to know that it is shit. Bombay Stock Exchange puts it in a Z category. Don't go that side, right? Stick to A and B1. That's good enough for you. And if you have invested in shit, give yourself some time frame saying, okay, I will invest in this share at 6 rupees. In 3 months, if it does not go to 12 rupees, I will sell it off. Or if it goes to 5 rupees, I will sell it off. Very strict stop loss, very strong discipline. Let's say you have a portfolio of 80 lakhs. You say 5 lakhs is what maximum, or maybe 8 lakhs, which is 10% of my portfolio. I will buy this shit. Maximum for all the tips that I get, and the minute that 8 becomes 12, I'll remove 4 and put it into main portfolio. I will keep doing that, and at maximum how much can I lose? I can lose only 8 lakhs, right? So you may make it 10 lakhs, you may make it 12 lakhs, but you will never go beyond 10% of your portfolio. So what is the maximum loss in all this shit put together? 10% of your portfolio. You can take it, have fun, right? How can one forget another big risk which people take? I mean, over gearing. When you're over optimistic, you think, oh, my salary is going to go up, my rental income from 2 houses is high, my dividend income is 4 lakhs a year. So let me now go and leverage and buy one more house, or things like that. Why I want to invest? So borrowing and investing in 3 houses, of which you are dependent on the rent for EMI, and on your job which is very high paying and therefore very insecure. How do you handle all this? It's not going to be easy. Look at the salary cuts that people have taken during this COVID pandemic. People earning 2 lakhs have just gone to 75,000. That's a cut in salary. People who are earning 2 lakhs have gone to zero because they've lost a job. If you are a vendor and let's say you're an advertiser or things like that, and if your customer is a builder, the chances are you have still not recovered from the demonetization kick, right? So if you're depending on where you are, your gearing can hurt you dramatically because your income can all stop at the same time. If you're very lucky, your tenant will call up and say, sir, I can't afford to pay the rent, so I'm vacating the flat. If you're unlucky, he will continue to stay in the flat and say, wait, when my situation improves, I will pay. So you have rent arrears. I'm not joking. You got rent arrears. So please beware that leveraging looks good when the markets are good, and leveraging can dramatically cut you when the markets are bad. What better example to give you than Mukesh Ambani and Anil Ambani? Did Mukesh Ambani leverage? Of course he leveraged. Did Anil Ambani leverage? Yes, of course he leveraged. It ruined Ambani and it made Mukesh Ambani, it ruined Anil and it made Mukesh prosperous, right? So the question is, how responsibly can you leverage? If you don't know how responsibly you can leverage, best is not to leverage. And the worst leverage is leveraging to buy assets, hoping to reduce the debt from the sale of assets or from income generated by the asset. So borrowing and investing makes no sense. Borrowing and buying a house to give it on rent, using the rent to make the payment for the EMI makes no sense. So better be careful about these things. Poor asset allocation, another risk which people take. Poor asset allocation means they will be excessively oriented towards equity. And in equity, they would have picked up only small cap, or they would have picked up 5 funds and all in the small cap category. So this is excessively wrong asset allocation. Asset allocation is not something which is easy for people to understand, but you should not at any stage have more than 70% in equity, maybe 75% in equity. And all these percentages don't matter for people with portfolio in 5 crores and 10 crores. Don't look at Ramdev Agarwals and Vallabh Bansalis and Rakesh Jhunjhunwalas of the world and say they are 99% in equity. Yes, they are 99% in equity, but the 1% which they have in debt is 1000 crores. And that 1000 crores or 500 crores or whatever it is more than sufficient for them to meet their lifetime expenses. So an Azim Premji or Ratan Tata are the exceptions. Don't look at them and try making your own rules. It is not going to happen, right? Then poor diversification and over diversification. Now when I say poor asset allocation, there are others who would have a poor diversification. excessively diverse, 100, 350 scripts or 150 scripts. Look, you don't need Motilal Oswal managing a few thousand crores, does not go beyond 70, 75 scripts, right? So that's enough. Have a concentrated portfolio, or even if you have a diversified portfolio, you don't need so many shares. What you may need is maybe 12, 13, 15, 20 shares. Beyond that, you will not even remember the names of the shares. So reduce, have a concentrated portfolio, but it does not mean that if you are an individual investor, don't go beyond 20, but you can have good schemes which have got 80, 90 schemes. If you remember, Peter Lynch had more than 1000, I think 1200 or 1300 shares in his portfolio, right? So there are no strict rules, but be careful about what you are diversifying into, and be clear as to why you are diversifying. Have some more focus than what you currently have. Thank you.